So, have you ever wondered if there's something more going on? Is it possible that at this very moment, some kind of invisible messenger is trying to get your attention? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into that exact question, and we're going to do it through the eyes of a true master of the spiritual life.
Okay, let's just get right into it. The huge idea we're exploring here isn't that angels aren't talking to us. The real problem, maybe, is that we've just forgotten how to listen. Our lives are so noisy, right? How can we possibly pick out that one quiet voice, the voice of our celestial guardian, from all that chaos?
And that's why our guide for this journey is Saint Teresa of Avila. She is an absolute giant of the faith, a spiritual master who basically spent her entire life learning how to do this, how to tell the difference between these genuine divine communications and all the other stuff. The random noise in our heads, or even the deceptions of the enemy.
Now, to really get what she's talking about, we have to start with one of her core concepts. She believes angels don't typically shout at us, they whisper. They get through to us using what she called interior touches. Think of them as these tiny, subtle movements in your soul that are just so easy to dismiss. You write them off as a random thought, a coincidence, or maybe just a gut feeling.
So, okay, if these touches are so incredibly subtle, how in the world are you supposed to recognize them? Well, this is where St. Teresa's wisdom becomes so practical. She actually identified 5 unmistakable signs to look for in your own life. So let's break them down.
All right, the first sign is what she called a sudden restraint from sin. I want you to picture this. You're right on the verge of saying something cutting, or maybe doing something you know you'll regret. But then, something inside you just puts on the brakes. It's not a logical thought, it's not fear of getting caught, it's this gentle but really firm inner voice that just says, nope, don't do it.
St. Teresa had this beautiful phrase for it. She called it a sweet restraint that would pull her back from the edge. Just think about that phrasing. It's not a harsh command, it's a sweet, gentle pull. So that little check you feel in your spirit, that might just be your angel, giving you a quiet reminder of who you're really meant to be.
Now, the second sign is just as subtle and maybe even more powerful. It's a feeling of, inexplicable peace that shows up right in the middle of a storm. Imagine you're just completely overwhelmed. You're drowning in anxiety. Problems are piling up. And then, out of nowhere, even though nothing on the outside has changed, this wave of deep serenity just washes over you. It's that quiet inner knowing that says, it's going to be all right.
And it's so important to get this. This peace isn't just you in denial or going numb emotionally. St. Teresa saw it as a direct gift, a kind of supernatural consolation that arrives precisely when all of our own earthly solutions have failed. It doesn't magically erase the problem, but boy, does it give you the strength to face it.
This whole idea of a heavenly intervention leads us right into the third sign, mysterious protection from unseen harm. I bet you can think of a time this happened. You narrowly avoided an accident. Maybe something made you leave the house 5 minutes late, or you took a weird detour for no reason. It's that uncanny feeling that some invisible hand just nudged things in the right direction.
But here's the kicker. According to St. Teresa, this protection goes way beyond just physical stuff. It could be about shielding you from a manipulative person, a terrible business decision, or some kind of spiritual trap you don't even see coming. And let's be honest, the dangers we can't see are often the ones that can do the most damage.
Okay, sign number 4 is a gentle insistence to pray. You know how it is. You're busy, you're caught up in the million things you have to do, and prayer just feels like a luxury you don't have time for. And then, this unexpected, persistent thought just pops into your head. You really need to pray, or maybe go to confession. It's not driven by guilt either. It feels more like a loving invitation.
St. Teresa called this one a sweet insistence. It's your angel's way of trying to keep you connected to the source of grace, especially when you've started to drift. It's just a simple, loving reminder of what really matters.
And that brings us to the 5th and final sign, spontaneous spiritual insights. This one is really cool. You're not even thinking about anything spiritual. Maybe you're washing dishes or driving to work, and bam, a profound spiritual truth or a Bible verse just floods your mind with absolute perfect clarity. It really feels like a light bulb just switched on in your soul.
St. Teresa wrote about this happening to her constantly, that these deep, profound truths would just illuminate her mind while she was doing the most mundane, ordinary things. These aren't just random thoughts. They're seen as perfectly timed gifts of wisdom from your angel, giving your soul exactly the nourishment it needs right when it needs it most.
But here's the big question, right? The one we all ask. How can you be sure any of this is actually from your angel and not just your own imagination, or maybe even indigestion? Well, luckily, St. Teresa developed some really clear criteria to tell the difference.
She gave us this incredibly practical 3-part filter to run any of these experiences through. First, does it line up with the truth? For her, that was scripture and church teaching. Second, what kind of fruit does it produce in you? Real divine guidance always leads to peace and humility, not anxiety and pride. And third, the ultimate test. Does it draw you closer to God? If the answer is no, then it's coming from somewhere else. Simple as that.
And when you actually look at them side by side like this, the contrast is, well, it's pretty stark. True inspirations, they just feel different. They land with a kind of gentle certainty, and they always produce good fruit. Deceptions, or even just our own chaotic thoughts, they often leave behind this residue of confusion, agitation, or ego. Learning to feel that difference, well, that's the whole art of discernment right there.
So you've recognized a sign, you've run it through the tests, and you think it's the real deal. What's the next step? Because according to St. Teresa, how we respond is everything. It determines whether these heavenly gifts increase in our lives or slowly start to fade away.
The response is really a 3-step process. First, gratitude. Just a simple, direct thank you to God and your angel. Second, docility, which is really just a fancy word for a willingness to actually follow the guidance you've been given. And third, use every single one of these communications as a launchpad to build a deeper relationship with God, who is the source of all of it.
So let's zoom out for a second. What would your life actually look like if you lived in this kind of conscious communion with your guardian angel? It's not about floating off into the clouds. It's about discovering a supernatural dimension that's already here, right in the middle of our ordinary lives.
Look, this isn't just some intellectual exercise. It has the power to transform your life from the inside out. That feeling of being totally isolated can start to fade, replaced by this profound sense that you are never, ever alone. You might start seeing other people differently, with more reverence, realizing they have a celestial guide too. And all of a sudden, daily life isn't just a grind anymore. It's this amazing collaboration between heaven and earth, a preparation for our true home. Ultimately, what this is all about is so much bigger than just getting through today's challenges. It's about actively building a bond that is meant to last for all of eternity. So, when you think about it, maybe the most important question isn't whether an invisible messenger is trying to talk to you. Maybe the real question is, are you finally ready to listen?